All right, we'll give it a couple of seconds before we get started.
Like you're wandering around lost, Judge.
Come again?
I said you act like you're wandering around lost.
Oh, yeah, as always, right? I got a message from Dr. Shackelford over at Washington Regional. He's going to be out. He's got a meeting with the governor. They're getting ready to do a press conference, so he won't be able to join us.
Okay.
All right, let's see. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get going, get started. Good afternoon, welcome back. I think our first meeting was a success back in October, and glad to have you guys back. And again, we want to welcome back Ms. Shelley Cern. Again, Michelle Cern and her team actually did the assessment on the criminal justice system here in Washington County. So again, she's agreed again to help facilitate today, as well as Katie Green, who's joining us today. Katie works with Ms. Lori Eville out of the National Institute of Corrections. Lori is going to be out for a few more weeks and has some medical things to take care of. And so, but really glad that Ms. Katie, and some of you guys have met Ms. Katie through some other work. And so again, Ms. Katie, glad to have you on. With that, let's go ahead and go around real quick and make sure we introduce so people know who is who. And let me say something that I think we do have about, I think, looks like 19 people who are in our participants. We want to make sure if you have questions, go ahead and put that in. We'll capture those questions, and then in our subsequent meeting, try to respond and have those answered by getting those to Ms. Shelley and Ms. Katie, and see what type of things we need to do to get those questions responded to. With that, Mr. Robbins, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Tell us a little bit who you are and where you're from.
I'm an executive director with Returning Home. We work with men and women coming from incarceration, and we're based in Springdale.
Hey, thanks, Nick, for joining us. Counselor Durrett.
Good afternoon, everybody. Matt Durrett. I am the prosecuting attorney for the 4th Judicial District, so Washington and Madison counties.
Thank you, sir. Judge Lindsay.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I'm here now, verbally. Mark Lindsay, I'm one of the 7, soon to be 8 circuit judges in Washington, Madison County, and I handle 75% of the criminal cases in Washington County and 100% of the criminal cases in Madison County.
Excellent. Thank you, Judge Ben. Counselor Lester.
Oh, okay. Hi, Brian Lester. I'm the county civil attorney for Washington County.
And thank you, sir. Ms. Paredo.
Hi, I'm Lourdes Paredo, and I am the outreach director for Engage, and also previously the victim advocate for the Springdale Prosecutor's Office.
Thank you for joining us. JP Johnson.
Yes, I'm Lance Johnson. Excuse me. I'm the District 1 Justice of the Peace in Washington County. I'm also chairman of the Jail Law Enforcement and Courts Committee on the Quorum Court.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Tyler.
Hello, I'm Laura Tyler, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Arisa Health and Ozark Guidance, which is one of the affiliates.
Thank you, Dr. Tyler, for joining us. Sheriff, saw you briefly.
Hey, Judge, Tim Helder, Sheriff of Washington County. I'm masked up. I'm riding in a car with the sheriff from Crawford County. We're being good.
There you
Trying
go.
not to get this COVID spread. Thanks, Judge.
Appreciate you joining us. Judge Zimmerman, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello. Hello.
You are?
Oh, Judge Stacy Zimmerman. I'm the administrative judge and also the juvenile judge, and we're just Zooming and having hearings on phone and in Zoom every day. It's delightful.
Thanks,
Thank you, Judge Wood.
Yep. Mr. Workman, Chief.
Yes, sir, Judge. Chris Workman. I'm the police chief for the city of Prairie Grove Police Department. I've been the acting police chief for about 6.5 years, at the department for 15. Glad to be here.
Chief, appreciate you joining us. And then Mr. Parker. Can you hear us, Mike? All right, let's jump over to Denny Heislip. Denny, you're on. Can you hear? Denny? There you go. Not hearing you, Denny. Oh, well, Denny heads up our public defender's office, and Mike works with our probation side. So again, he heads up the region for that. And so again, we got a good number of folks here. Again, Washington Regional. I don't see, well, there's a couple of other people who haven't joined us yet. But anyway, with that, let's go ahead and we got the agenda. Ms. Shelley, you want to go ahead and take it from here?
Sure. And my apologies, everyone. I'm having some internet issues this morning, it seems. So if I happen to go away or freeze up, I apologize, and I'll get back on as soon as I can. Thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to see you all again and to hear more about all the work that you're doing. And in these challenging times, I always want to take the opportunity to recognize, everyone's flexibility and dedication to keeping things moving, even though everything that the world is thrown at us right now is a little bit of still an unknown. So thank you all for being here. I wanted to take a minute. So on our last meeting last month, Lori from NIC was with us, and you got to meet her and talk with her and get to know her. And I'd like to give Katie an opportunity to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her background and provide any other information that she thinks you all should know about her. So Katie, I'll hand it off to you.
Can you hear me? Good. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us, and NIC is really excited about this opportunity. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a correctional program specialist in the same division as Lori, the Community Services Division. And kind of we look at really the community work around pretrial, post-trial work, gender specific and that sort of thing. So we have a lot of work underneath our division. I've been with NIC a little over 5 years now. I have to think about that. Prior to that, I was working in Virginia. I was a director of a criminal justice programming in a multi-jurisdictional area in Williamsburg, Virginia area. And so I had a lot of work in pretrial, post-trial, reentry, criminal justice planning, and I had a CJCC that I was managing. And then I got into, I needed to be more a part of it. So I worked on getting a planner staffing done through our agency. A lot of work I did in Virginia statewide is the implementation of evidence-based practice at the local level with pretrial and probation, and then came up to NIC. And it's been a combination of a lot of systems work, which I think is really why I'm very interested in CJCCs, because I think given where we started with this about 20 years ago, I think we were very focused on a specific part of the system when we did some of our resource, and specifically the jail, because the jail populations were basically being affected by a lot of the decision making in the systems, but we tended to focus on jail overcrowding. Our work now is really to focus system wide and look at all of the decision points through the system, from a point of contact with law enforcement to usually adjudication. So I've done a lot of work in this area. I've got some resources that I'll talk about. So I'm very excited. And Lori and I will be working together on this collaboratively. She brings some expertise in, and I bring some expertise in, and then we're going to bring in some more expertise through contracting with some folks to get to drill down and do the work that we have ahead of us. So I'll get more into that when we talk about the approach. But thank you, Shelley.
Fabulous. Thanks, Katie. So the second item on our agenda is just to do a quick review of anything that's happened from our last meeting till now, either on the Washington County end of things or on the NIC end of things. So Judge Wood and JP Johnson and others, I don't know if you have anything that we all need to know or that the good of the committee needs to know about what's been done in the last month on the Washington County side of things.
JP Johnson, I don't know if you wanted to share. I do know that go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Judge.
We did have a discussion, I think a couple of weeks ago. Some of the JPs were interested in setting some monies aside for this CJCC should the body say, yes, we do want to have a planner, and it should be a part-time planner, a full-time planner, or there's some other needs that they would have. They wanted to set some dollars aside for that. It's still in discussion, and but again, that is one of the things that has been discussed since our last meeting, and that we will have a new court come in January. And so a lot of the members of this current court are the ones who really help authorize and say, yes, Judge, let's go into a contract and agreement with NCSC to do an assessment. And some of them will be turning off the court. And so this was one of the ways that we can put something out in the budget, line it out, and just have dollars set aside. Should we go into saying, yes, let's go ahead and do some staffing or some other projects that would need some funding. Did I get that about right, JP Johnson?
Yes, sir. I think that the key point that came out in our discussion was we've got to have an idea of what we're going to spend this money for, what we're going to do with it. And I suspect the money will be available or will be appropriated when we have a better idea what we're going to do.
That's correct. And that would probably be the largest part of that, Ms. Shelley.
Well, again, I can't, stress enough, state enough, and I'm not sure, Katie has anything to add to, but just the swiftness with which you all are working on implementing this particular recommendation and being ready to appropriate resources in addition to all of your time, I think is just remarkable and unheard of. I know Lori and I said that at the last meeting. I'm sure I've said that other times in other meetings as well. So this is just unheard of and remarkable. And especially in the time of 2020, I think we've seen some jurisdictions really be able to take advantage of some of the, I don't want to say downtime because nobody has downtime, but take advantage of some of the shifting of resources and priorities to be able to really do some innovative and good work, as opposed to just being stuck in the constant reacting and just trying to get by, essence of what's going on this year. So again, I applaud your efforts in sitting down and really taking this seriously and moving on. I don't know, Katie, if you have anything else to say on this, that's great. If not, please do feel free to share with the committee anything else that you have to update on the NIC end.
I just concur with what you said. It is incredible, and that's a great focus to say that we're going to dedicate, resources up front for this initiative. I think it's key. It will be really helpful to getting you in a place where you're going to be able to work on the initiatives that that NC, the National Center for State Court, has identified. So great work. Kudos to you.
I got a question real quick before we move on to something else. So what is it, Lance, that the JPs need to see from us that would get that ball rolling on that position? Do we need a defined role? Do we need, hey, if there's money set aside, it would only be used for this specific position? And then if Michelle or Katie could give us a kind of an overview of what that position would look like, that we can get it in front of the JPs and get that approved before we get too far into, roll into the new year. Like you said, now we're restarting with new folks, trying to explain it to them from square one.
And that's a lot of what's going to happen today.
Okay, great.
That's absolutely correct. That without some idea of exactly where it's going and how much it's going to take, there's going to be some reluctance on the part of the quorum court to appropriate that money. But I think when we have a defined plan, I think it'll happen.
Okay.
Fabulous. So Katie, can you talk at all about anything that the committee needs to know? I keep going back and forth between committee and council. My apologies for using the same word.
I'm having a little hard hearing you, so sorry about that. You want me to kind of just go into the TA piece of it, the overview of that? Would that be helpful? Okay. So I talked to the judge earlier, the TA technical assistance request has been approved, and it really is at this point, we have the relationship started on our end with you all. Lori and I have been kind of thinking about how to move forward, and I think it's really important to get the structure in place. Okay, so that you have a good collaborative body. It's obviously you're here, you're ready to move forward. What I'd like to do is really put some structure to it, some formalized structure to that, and part of that will include the staffing piece. Okay, because I think in order for you, once you look at what your purpose is, your vision, your mission, your decision-making structure, how your leadership will look, the roles, you're going to want to have a person in place to help you sort of implement that, okay? So initially I see the planner will be used to help with the administrative part of this board and really getting it organized with the planning, with the meeting, with the information that's coming out of the meetings, what you want to do with that. But ultimately, we're going to get you to a place where you're going to be really having a strategic plan in place, and they are going to be responsible for the oversight of that to make sure that if you have ad hoc committees working on specific priorities, the work of those committees will be brought forth by will be sort of managed by the planner as well as brought forth to the board by this. So it's basically the working course, if you will, of your CJCC. So the way we want to approach this again is looking at is getting you guys structured first, and that I see as, again, in the COVID world we're in, that would be be done virtually, and a lot of the work that NC the National Center for State Courts has completed will be utilized as a framework. Okay, we've had the interviews, you've collected the information, and then we're going to kind of come back and just really look at that as a systems and show that to everyone here as far as how the information was gathered, right, individually, but how it comes together collectively. So we would want to do a good overview of your system, and sort of, I think, layer on top of that is sort of a data sort of analysis, if you will, kind of see what data is existing and what data were some data gaps. So we want to kind of include that in part of the process. And then ultimately what we expect to come out of this is that you identified the priorities in the report, but how to sort of get that into sort of a working plan, a plan of action to sort of address those. So it's going to, in my mind, be important to that the CJCC make sure initially that we have everybody at the table, because you really are wanting those key decision makers from each of those decision points. And I'm going to ultimately start working with you on that as far as, okay, here's who's at the table, here's who we think should be at the table, and then giving you all some input as far as what your decisions are about how moving forward with that membership. And then really, because you really want to have people who can make the decisions, who can say yes, because you're going to be looking at really what policies are in place, what practices are in place, and how are they working together, and how are, so maybe there might be some rubs, some conflict there, and how do you sort of resolve that to get the best result. And you'll work this through once you have sort of the clear idea of where you want to go, right? So that will be all sorted out in your goals and your objectives. And the idea is to work this through sort of again, in a virtual setting with a facilitated session and getting everybody together. We'll probably, I think the best way to do it is probably similar to the way, Shelley, that you guys did this, was sort of in some individual conversations, specifically around CJCCs, gathering that information and bringing that together into the larger group, and then having that conversation. And I will tell you, we're not going to reinvent the wheel here in some cases, because there's so many great examples out there. There's a lot of great functioning, high functioning CJCCs that we're going to be able to take their resources, their experiences, and being able to take that and put that in place for you all. For example, I already have job descriptions for a criminal justice planner. Okay, and I want to be able to share that with you, and so we can kind of start formalizing what that looks like, and what that role, not only what the responsibilities are, but the role of that individual, so we can start crafting that. And so when we're looking at missions and visions, we'll look at examples of that. Okay, we'll look at what other localities are doing, because everybody's sort of in a similar place, that you really have the criminal justice system, as we know, works well in silos. We've done that over the years. I mean, we know how to work in silos, but we don't know how to work collectively. And so that's the idea of the CJCC, is really there to help move forward the ideas and the work of the systems, because collectively we want to have a shared vision on what we want our system to look like. So we'll kind of deal with a lot of the statement, the purpose of the CJCC. We'll get down into a lot of, like I said, the detail around the functioning, the authorization, the bylaws, voting structure, committees, that sort of thing, chair, vice chair, that sort of thing, meeting logistics. And then really, because I feel like you're kind of ahead of the game, because you've really determined a lot of the work through the work that the National Center for State Courts have done. So we've already got sort of the idea of what needs to be done. We just have to get it organized and how we're going to kind of approach it. So that's how I see our work. And Lori will probably do some really drilling down. I don't know if you all are familiar with the evidence-based decision-making initiative, but really data-driven decision-making, using the research to inform decisions at each of the different key decision points throughout the system. And really coming collectively together and deciding what are the priorities to kind of make the system work better. An example I'll give you is pretrial functions in many localities is very minimal to none. Okay, there's not having that formalized engagement of a pretrial services organization at the front end, determining, gathering information, providing it to the judiciary, and basically helping them with make more informed decisions about who comes before them, what defendants come before them. So, I mean, there's a whole, that's a whole process that we put in place as far as how to get that engaged, how to get that organized and developed, and engaging all of the front end stakeholders on that. So that's drilling down just a little bit further into the priorities. Okay, how are you going to get that done? And so I kind of see it as a phased sort of work, if you will. I think getting it structured first, and then getting the CJCC sort of really together and formalized, and then plugging away at the priorities that were identified by the center. Okay, so. then and there'll be a lot of good resources for you all. We're developing, NIC is developing a microsite with resources about CJCCs nationally and what's going on, not only at the state level, but the local levels. And so there'll be a lot of information that I would expect sort of when you, that are going to be available to you all. Our microsite is currently, what we're doing is transitioning all of the content we created and developed with other stakeholders, bringing that to our website, nic.gov, and it'll be specific to CJCCs, and there'll be lots of resources available there, examples of different job descriptions, bylaws, strategic plans, that sort of thing. So there'll be a lot of information to sort of say, okay, this is how they did it. Gives you an idea of how you can proceed. You can put it to your own, individual sort of needs, but gives you an idea of how people sort of crafted it to go forward. And ultimately showing, giving you guys examples of what's been successful with CJCCs, okay, and what they've been able to do and what they've been able to accomplish, and being able to sustain it. Because typically what happens with boards is that you get this initial sort of collective agreement, but players change throughout the years, we know, for various reasons, but really how to sustain that board once you have it in place. So there's a lot of good resources that we will be able to share, a lot of direction, a lot of guidance, and around technical assistance to help you get to that point of a really high functioning CJCC, and really then drilling down and addressing some of those priorities. So I kind of want to make sure, sometimes I think I talk too fast. if I've gotten too much information out there and then you're like, okay, what does that mean? Please ask me any questions about what I've shared with you, and if it didn't make any sense, let me know that too. I'll try to better clarify.
Any questions or comments on everything that Katie had to say? You're right. There was a lot, but I think, well, just to reiterate that the two things that stuck out with me, Katie, was the point that Washington County is so much further ahead than other jurisdictions, in that they have the identified recommendations and just to prioritize and figure out how to get them in place to develop a plan. And then the second was no need to reinvent the wheel. And I can't reiterate that, stress that enough. There are certain resources out there that, with NIC's assistance and looking at what's already out there. I see my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, you're buffering a little bit, but I got the gist of what you said. So I think when there was this resource, the guidelines for CJCCs, that was developed in 2002, and that's that project I'm talking about, putting to the microsite on the NIC website. And it's basically, we worked with the National Criminal Justice Association and an advisory committee made up of CJCC people from, whether they are funders or planners or policy folks. We all work together to come up with what content needed to be in this new resource that we're developing. So, and it comes with not only a good explanation of why this is important, different things, but examples of what they have created as far as bylaws, like I said, job descriptions. So there's a lot of resources that will be available to you all as we move through this journey, for your use to kind of craft what is going to be good for Washington County. Yeah, I can hear you.
It would help to understand. That would be part of the issue right now, on top of the connectivity. So any questions, committee members, any concerns, any feedback on everything that Katie had to say in these last couple of minutes, just before we move on to talking more in depth about anything? I'm seeing no gestures. I'm seeing no unmuting. So, Katie, do we want to talk a little bit more about, how, you know, I sort of am going to defer to you about next steps in the conversation and how we could best use the time together to make sure that we get JP Johnson what he needs for the quorum court around the staffing and structure. So could we maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think basically, like I said, the steps were, if we want to make the initial step is to getting that information together, getting that position kind of crafted, what that position will do. I'll give you some great information on that. I've got examples that I can share. My thinking is that if we want to move kind of quickly with this, that if we worked in a smaller work group and then bring it to the larger group, is that something we can consider?
Do we need to do a work group for that position? I mean, I would say, I think everybody in the group says it's necessary. And if you guys have just a layout of what that position does and estimated cost, it would cover it.
Okay.
I think as the JPs are already in on what we're doing because they've already funded an expensive study. We just need to let them know what we need and define it clearly.
So, so can I suggest maybe that what I can do is kind of give you a draft example of it based on what I know and what I've collected, and then share a couple of examples and give that to you all. Is that enough to go forward with?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay.
And I think that's what we need. I mean,
okay, I'll give you a draft job description. And I'll give you some examples of where that was pulled from. And then what I'd like to do is just get a timeline from you when you need this. And it was probably maybe yesterday, right?
Yes.
That's how we operate.
Yeah.
Ms. Katie, can you talk a little bit about clearly you're going to send it, and obviously you know our size, our population, and some of the information that came from the assessment. I would imagine that also will help determine whether it be a part-time or full-time, whether it be one staff, no staff, outside of the planner. Do you have any insight that you can share with us just in general? The larger the population, if it's super urban, metro city, large jail, et cetera, and criminal justice system, maybe they have a larger staff and it is full-time. I'm just trying to get some baseline, if you will.
Yeah, you have. I think about what the workload is at this point. It'll build. That's so maybe you start off, maybe, but that might be a little bit more difficult to just secure somebody part-time to move ultimately to full-time. I don't know if that creates problems, but I will tell you, just to give you an idea, and it's also recognizing the value of the position, because you don't really know what you have until you start using it. Right. And then you recognize how it's working for you. Something I did in Virginia is when I secured that criminal justice planner, I used Byrne funding to support that grant. And it was that position. And that was a seed money, basically, at 100%. For the first year and down to about 25% in the fourth year. But I will tell you, I had 6 localities that I had to pony up money for this position. And by the third year, they were ready to go. They were recognizing that they would fully fund it. We were at 75% funding it at that point, but they were in agreement that this was a position that they didn't want to go away in the fourth year. So it as you see the value of it, I think ultimately what I see initially is a startup, is to really organize this. You're going to have somebody who's going to be able to hit the ground with us working with a structured piece of the CJCC, then having all of the sort of information available to move forward with strategic planning. So this person's going to come in with the help of us to kind of have helping with the structuring of the CJCC, but also the work. So it depends on, again, if you have to show, I think you have a lot of information from the report itself to say there's a need, right? And this is how it will be used and utilized. So I think that's going to be a return on your investment, is to really be successful with the priorities that are outlined in the report. So as far as determining level of work, whether part-time or full-time, I'll just have to kind of give you, I think once you sort of see the job descriptions, I think you're going to determine that that's a full-time job, and that you may want to see how you can fund that. And but also I think it's an opportunity to say, hey, we've done this, but we might want to look at other ways to fund this in the future. So there's opportunities to secure funding outside of local funding, so is what I'm getting at. Does that help at all, what I've just shared with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I would want to know if I put this together, and who am I sending it to? And also if you can give me a date other than yesterday.
You have my information. You can go ahead and send it to me, and I can share it with the coordinating committee.
Okay, Judge. And when would you like that?
You're muted. Sorry.
If you could do it before Thanksgiving, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll just turn around and get it out the following week.
Yep, I can get that. I get that. I'll get it to you 24th.
That'll work.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie, if I might, be able to add a little bit more context to that coordinator position and the workload and the full-time versus part-time. And, granted it was a number of years ago, but I was hired on as a coordinator that for a jurisdiction that was receiving NICTA. And I came into a CJCC that had, with the assistance of NIC, already developed bylaws and a committee structure. So I walked into a council of 13 individuals and an executive committee, I think of 5, and 5 subcommittees that needed to be brought together, review the bylaws, brought up to speed. And those subcommittees were not only a composition of CJCC members, but also then their support staff or other members who helped, who could help discuss the topic at hand, whether it be pre-trial or gosh, what were some of my other committees? Now they're all blanking on me. I think we had a jail committee, a specific jail committee and a specific pretrial committee, but it was about, bringing everyone together, getting them on the same page, making sure that we're aligning their work with the work of the council, keeping the executive committee up to date on everybody's work, and then having that coordinator also in that role. I had to build relationships with all of the council members, right? So they could get to know me, get to trust me, and be able, so we could have some of those hard conversations about making change and changing policies, and sort of helping to educate them about how they might have felt a little bit uncomfortable about being pushed in a certain direction that they wouldn't have gone towards had it not been for the existence of a CJCC. So that's a lot of on the ground, behind the scenes, working to build those relationships so that as the council evolves and becomes more of an institution, you have that trusted relationship and that ability to be vulnerable. And we've talked about that a little bit with this group about, it's going to make some of you in your current roles, let's say your day-to-day jobs, a little bit uncomfortable having to have conversations and bring data, try to dig down and understand how your siloed working, which is a statement, not a judgment by any means, but how that influences everybody else's work. And so that coordinator really is the glue and the motivator and the worker to really keep all of the CJCC initiatives going on, because you're not being asked to come in and analyze data. Your staff might be asked to share things and whatnot, but that's really the role of the coordinators to become a jack of all trades, to an extent, with data analyst and a record keeper.
Yes,
All right.
yeah, and I'll spell all that in the in those responsibilities. But you're right, and they're the boundary spanner, right? They're really able to be objective and really keep the eye on the prize, if you will, which is the shared vision and the ultimate goals and objectives of this collective body.
Any questions, comments? Katie, what else do we need to talk about today? So we have 20 minutes remaining. I don't know if there's if you have things you want to make sure we get through before we start talking about structure or next steps.
Yeah, I do. I think because I really want to look at the current. I got a good list of who is on the call, but don't know if that includes everybody who is on the CJCC. So I would like to get a list of that and just be able to share with you where I think there might be gaps in membership, and then and then having those kind of conversations around getting making sure we have the right people at the table, okay, or we have people at the table that should be there, right? Okay, that's I think is key, because you have think about your system from every key decision point, and is that represented? And I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll share sort of a diagram of the key decision points, and you can just tell me, hey, do we have somebody in that position who is currently a member or should be a member? So let's kind of make sure that we have the membership looked at and agreed upon. That would be sort of, I think, next steps. Then I think it would also be helpful to start looking at sort of scheduling. Is this typical? I mean, this is your second meeting, and is this the best time for everybody to meet? I mean, a good question I would have is how is this? How did you all come together? How was it decided that the people in the room would come together? Was it an existing collaboration and you just moved it into the CJCC, or was there other things happening?
So by and large, a number of the members were somewhat part of our Criminal Justice Advisory Board. We put a crisis stabilization unit together in partnership with Dr. Tyler and her team, Mozart Guidance, ERISA, a couple of years ago. And to do that, we had to submit this advisory, this criminal justice team to be a part of the application. The only challenge with that was that we broadened that crisis stabilization unit to be more than just Washington County. We have 4 counties that are sharing in this, and so they also were participants on the board, and they are still on this advisory board. Their sheriff, their county judge, and so it made it a much larger group. So when we got to now the assessment and saying we now just need a Washington County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, we pared it down by removing those other counties, if you will, and then making sure that we extended out to a couple of others to add in to flush out what you're saying as far as who's in that system and that pipeline, to make sure that we're somehow representing as much of that as possible.
Okay.
So it's kind of a hybrid, if you will. The existing group existed as a criminal justice board or advisory board, and now we've had to pare it down to make it just Washington County and not Northwest Arkansas Crisis Stabilization Unit, the Criminal Justice Advisory Board, if you're following that.
Okay, got it. What I will do in the meantime is I'll get you that decision point and just saying, hey, and I'll just list out and saying, do we have coverage here? You have a great representation. I'll say that up front. I mean, I'm impressed with who is on the call today. So I'm just making sure we may have everybody, because moving forward, you want to make sure that it's inclusive, and that because decision making will be happening, and you want them to have the buy-in right up, to be a part of the decision making right up front. So I think that would be a critical next step. And then I really, my thinking is that we're going to start really looking at talking about all of the administrative piece of this. I think you can work parallel with looking at the planning position and kind of moving forward with, recruitment for that position, but also at the same time to start your structuring exercises and start working through that. What I'd like to do is to sort of have that facilitated sort of sessions. And I know being on a virtual environment, a couple hours is kind of enough. I know that people, you get tired eyes, you get a lot of things being in this environment. So I would probably want to space it out a little bit. But I guess what I would be, and the way I'm going to move forward is I'm going to put together a scope of work for the facilitation piece. But I want to kind of have a sense, or would you, given that if we were doing this normally, okay, we would come on site and we'd have a meeting with you. We'd kind of just say, hey, just carve out a day and we're going to kind of work through this, right? But we're not doing that. So this is, I think, I don't see this happening, us coming on site, at least for the next foreseen near future, for sure, next 6 months. And so let's get this started virtually. So would you be in agreement to a 2-hour chunk at a time? Is that doable? And do you think that if we did this, I would want to keep it going. So would I be asking too much for a weekly meeting, or do you just give me an idea if that's doable within your schedules, if we did a couple hours each week? And I think this, in the way my procurement process works, I don't see this, there's these 2-hour meetings starting till probably January. Okay, so just because it takes a while for us to kind of go through our government red tape, if you will, to secure somebody to facilitate these sessions.
And I would say that the sooner we could have those dates, the easier it would be to try to, build this into the schedule. So,
yeah. Okay, that's what
it will depend upon, having that plugged in early.
Yep, I agree with that. But does that sound reasonable? Sort of the structure I threw out so far, maybe a couple hours a week. Is that, what do you? Anybody say nope, can't do that, or is that just?
Well, if I can I jump in here for a second? I know that we're talking about, and I may be jumping ahead, but we're talking about developing the structure, and I'm assuming that includes breaking down into subcommittees. Are we talking about having all of us together once a week for 2 hours, or what are we talking about? Because my concern, and not to interrupt, but my concern is on a committee like this, it's the size of it is kind of necessary because of all the people that you need to include, but the size of it makes it a little bit cumbersome in terms of getting stuff done. And so, I mean, I've never done one of these before, but I don't know that how much we're going to get accomplished a weekly meeting, 2 hours with all of us together if we're not breaking down into subcommittees. So that's just my concern.
I think a good approach may be that we may be doing some interviews individually prior to bringing the group back together, because then we can sort of get some themes together about, for example, what you think the goal, what the purpose of the board should be, that sort of thing. So we can have that sort of information up front and to sort of share that with the sort of the individual's response and sort of put that together, like I said, in sort of a themed type approach, and then go with that. And so kind of getting that ball started a little bit. But I think there may be some other creative ways we can come up with getting input without having individually input or small group input, and then bring it to the larger group. But that would be something we'd sort of flesh out. But I want to hear from you all. It's important to get your feedback on what you think, what kind of structure we can do. We know how to do this really well face to face, but virtually it's a little different landscape here. We know that. So let's try to think about, I think that a good approach, though, like I said, would probably be reaching out individually, sort of like the center did, to each of the members. And then we'll have specific questions around CJCCs, and then bringing that together with the group, and then deciding how to move forward with the work of, the structuring of the CJCC.
Well, and another thing is, I know that everyone likes having face-to-face meetings, but these virtual meetings, especially if we're talking about a 2-hour meeting every week or every other week, the virtual might work out better, because depending on where you have these meetings, you're going to add 30 minutes to an hour to people's travel times. Sure. And so virtually, I'm sitting at my desk right now, and I think everyone else is sitting where they're working, and they're not having to travel. So virtual may not be a bad thing for the here foreseeable future.
Right.
So just
yep. I think I agree with you. I think some of our work strategies will change based on this. Post-COVID, that we'll probably be doing some of the same things we're doing now.
And while I'm kind of running my mouth here, just let me chime in. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, or get too far ahead of the group, or get too far in the weeds, but I appreciate y'all saying that we're kind of ahead of the pace of where everything else is. But I think we've also got to consider, and I'm not trying to rush anything, but going through their final report, there are a lot of recommendations, some of which are very, very good, and I think some of which are very important. I mean, like the pretrial services, I think could be very helpful, but we've got to keep in mind that a lot of these suggestions are going to require funding, and some of them considerable funding. So it's not just the funding. I think right now, I don't want to speak for JP Johnson, but right now what's contemplated by the Quorum Court is funding for a facilitator. And I don't know how much convincing it's going to take the Quorum Court if this committee decides that we need to follow some of these recommendations, such as pretrial services or whatnot. I mean, that's something that we need to think of, because funding is going to take some time, and the longer it takes us to come to those conclusions, then the longer it's going to take to actually get funding. So, like I said, I'm not trying to rush anything. I'm just kind of wanting to put that on the radar as not necessarily a sense of urgency, but something that we don't need to keep on the back burner for an extended period of time. So those are just my 2, 5, 8 cents, whatever.
Okay. All right. May I throw in my 2 cents for a minute real quick? I think that we may be talking about 2 positions. I think we definitely need, it maybe not right this minute, but I think we are going to need a facilitator for our meetings. And to me, that is someone that leads the discussion, keeps it on track, but doesn't, I think it needs to be someone of impeccable character, someone who doesn't have an agenda or a goal for where they want the committee to go, but someone who can keep all these other folks at the table, including myself, on track, and not talking about, well, this is how we used to do it, or this is how I think it ought to be done, but keep us working together to come up with it. And then I think we may need, I checked, and Fort Smith called it a criminal justice court, Sebastian County. You 2 ladies may be familiar or may have worked with them. They call it a criminal justice coordinator / administrator. And to me, that would be kind of the day-to-day person who gathers information and schedules everything. And they budgeted for 2020 $45,000 for that position. So that, that just gives all of us some idea, I think. The facilitator, I think, could be someone who's not on the committee. We all are kind of stakeholders in this. So I think it could be someone who's not on the committee now, but who might volunteer to do just to lead the discussions whenever we meet and keep us on track. Okay, that's it.
Yep, and I think that can be accomplished with the planner position. I think that's the person that's sort of objective.
I don't think it can. I don't think it can. The planner is going to have their own ideas, I believe. So I disagree with you on that. I think we're talking about two different people.
Well, I think when we get more into developing the structure of the board, I think we'll be able to address it at that point on what roles and responsibilities are. And then you can decide if that is not going to be accomplished through whether it's the planner position or like you said, bringing in an outside facilitator. It's been my experience that between the leadership of the board, the chair, vice chair, that they can keep things kind of going. I know that they have interest in the content and the priorities that might affect them, but there's a way to kind of structure the meeting to kind of keep it going forward. But again, having the facilitated piece, I mean, that could be what you might be looking for in the planner position you're filling. But if you think that should be separate, then that's for you all to decide that. And Shelley, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Not really. And Judge, I see what you're saying about the person to keep things going and things like that. And we had, I've seen a number of places who have, that planner position, and then who have, through the executive committee, a chair and a vice chair. And they really are, those two are the ones who are take on dual roles on the council. They're there in their day-to-day role, and they're there as that chairperson to keep things focused, keep discussion moving, things like that. And so I think, like Katie said, it's a matter of, as you get more into the discussion around structure and roles, that I think maybe this will become a little bit more clear about how, call them a facilitator, a chairperson, you can call it a number of different things, but I certainly think that as you guys discuss more about what your structure will look like and who's going to be at the table, that it might get a little bit clearer over time.
Well, obviously, I've never done this before, but I just think that the coordinator, the hired county official to coordinate this, this is my gut feeling, is that they're going to kind of look at it as their baby. And I think it's important for the facilitator to be someone who is there to facilitate, not to point us in a direction. That's this committee's job, to decide what direction the committee wants to go. And so I just think they're going to have and again, I've never done this before, so I'm willing to wait and see. But I just think whoever this county employee is going to have a vested interest and an opinion. And I'm not sure that the facilitator should have an opinion other than keeping us all on track.
Thanks, Judge. So we have a minute left, everyone. The quickest hour of my week, let me tell you. So what else do we need to discuss? Judge Wood, JP Johnson, Katie. What else do you all need?
So I got the takeaway, obviously, being that we'll get you the full list, and then you'll get the system key. Make sure we got that in sync, as well as you're going to get the planner job description, if you will, and the role and their responsibility. So we kind of have a rough idea by next week, and I'll get that out to the CJCC. And then obviously we just need to be marinating and thinking about the frequency, it sounds like, of meetings maybe kicking off in January, whether that be multiple times, multiple hours in a week, or can it be, and again, if we were coming together, could you do a 4-hour session and then you're only meeting maybe once a month or twice a month because you've been able to block out that versus, maybe 2-hour Zoom every week. And again, I think that can be a lot, and I think Counselor was talking about that, trying to figure out people's time and maybe doing the individual reach outs will help in mitigating some of that.
Yeah. Okay. So that will likely be first steps, is having those sort of individual conversations first before we do the collective gathering. Okay.
Johnson, I don't know if you had any more that you wanted to share on that. All right, so the last piece is, let's go ahead and look at the calendar for December 18 being the next gathering. I think we had a couple of people drop off at 1. It is 1, but December 18 at noon. And again, we'll come back at that point, and if that's good with the team, that's where we'll head. Thank you again, Katie, to you and your team for approving us. That's good news to hear that we have been approved to partner with NIC, and obviously, Ms. Shelley, again, we can't thank you enough for your work with the NCSC and keeping that in front of us and helping us facilitate today. Anything before we head out? Thank you guys all again. I did see that Judge Beaumont jumped on, and again, our corrections guy, I don't know, Mike Parker, if you were able to hear any of that, or Denny, because we couldn't get you guys on, but thank you guys all for joining us. Have a good Thanksgiving. Anything else, Ms. Katie, Ms. Shelley, before we depart?
No, thank you. And I look forward to working with everybody.
My best to Ms. Lori as well.
Thank you. I'll
all right.
share that.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.